Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, man, it's cold. Okay everyone, I'm in my garage and I'm here for a very particular reason. I just got back from work. I had to stop at the big box store to buy a brand new extension cord. So it's a long story, we'll get that in a moment, but I gotta get some power out to the greenhouse. This cord right here used to be in the cabin cold frame. And does something look a little bit peculiar about this cord? Oh, that is not a good thing. That's right, everybody. We had a little bit of a kerfuffle. Is that even a word? A conundrum. It's not good. Okay, so I've got to get an extension cord from my garage to the PSGF because it's a little bit chilly. Not horrible yet, but we got to fix it before it gets horrible. So I went to the store real quickly and I got myself a 100-foot cable cord here for the PSGF. Now, the 100 feet is a 12-gauge cord because it's got to maintain the ability to have my heater in case we need heat in the PSGF. And we need a heater in the PSGF because tonight we're going to 7 below zero. And right now as I come home from work, it is 0 outside, 0 degrees, is very cold, and the wind is blowing so much that it's 20 below wind chill right now. Not a great place to be. Okay, so I've got my new 12-gauge cord, and I've got my new, no, this is 14 gauge, but this is the 12 gauge adapter. Here's the brand new one that's not melted. Let's go get to the PSGF in a hurry. I'm inside the PSGF. I had to go back and get my hat on, only halfway down through the yard untangling the cord because it is blowing so hard. I probably hit 25 below zero with that gust of wind. Dare I say 30 below. Now you can see a discrepancy in my two sensors. One says it's 21, one says it's 32. Regardless, we are in the 20s probably realistically, and we got to change this now. Hey everyone, yeah, we're back in the plant room now. Whew. Man, it is cold outside. As you can probably tell with my glasses, the steam and the humidity in this room is a lot different than the cold and frigidness outside. So I went to retrieve this tree. I'll tell you why in a second. But as I came back into the room here, yeah, oh, there you are. Now I can see you. Yeah, all this fog and steaming up. Okay, so what in the world is going on? You know, we try to prepare for everything in bonsai, but we're not always there. Yesterday, when we came home from work, my wife noticed that the microwave wasn't blinking, it was just dark, which meant there was no power to it. Not that the power went out and then it was blinking because it went back on. That plug-in was now dead. And so I went out to the box to check the box, and it was tripped. So then I pushed it back on. I turned it all the way off and turned it back on. And I heard this strange humming noise, and I wasn't quite sure. I went back in the house to see if that was the actual circuit, because they're not labeled very well at all. And it turned out that by the time I got to the house inside from the garage, my wife said, yeah, that one worked, but it went back off again. I went, oh, that's probably not good. So I went back out to the box, and sure enough, it had been tripped again. Couldn't figure it out, but when I turned it back on again, there was this little hum in there, and like, oh my gosh, I am not an electricity sound person. So I left it off, and that wall of the kitchen doesn't have outlet power. Didn't think much of it beyond that. We'd have to figure it out. We're gonna have to get an electrician out, and so we'll do that as soon as possible. But that one wall we could deal with. So then this morning, because we have a cold spell coming up, we're talking polar vortex type stuff, down to 7 below zero tonight, 7 below. It's gonna be chilly. And right now the wind chill, again, is at 25 below, wind chill and 20 below, with a temp of about 1 below right now as I record this.
But I went outside because I knew the PSGF was going to be like in maybe an odd situation with the cold weather tonight. But it was still okay in there because our high today was 23 degrees Fahrenheit. But that happened at midnight. So the PSGF was fine from a day of some sun, and it warmed up into the 30s. Everything was great. But this morning I was like, okay, well, this afternoon it's going to drop like crazy. I'm going to probably have to fix this. But little did I know then in the PSGF what was going on. So I went to go to the cabin cold frame because my heater wasn't working right. So if the heater wasn't working right, was the power not on from the cabin cold frame? The source that goes in? I checked it out. And when I went in there, I opened the door, and as soon as I opened the cabin cold frame door and smelled, oh no, I mean, I was like fire. Something burnt, something melted. This was horrible. I smelled plastic. As I had my flashlight this morning, it was still a little dark. As I brightened things up a little bit, look at one of my poor trees. Now, these are my trees that I'm not quite as worried about. They're arborvitaes, kind of a tree that I'm seeing if I can do some things with, kind of to imitate that Hinoki cypress look. And look at that, everybody. Black soot. There was like a little fire in my mini cabin cold frame. There had to be a fire, and I literally have fire damage on one of my trees. Now, it was only one, I can really smell it. It was only on one of my trees, but it happened, and it was like, oh my gosh. So I didn't know what to do. Now, the power was still off from the house, so I was like, oh, figured it out. The plug that's just outside that same wall in the house that the microwave is on, outside our door to our deck, is where actually the cabin cold frame is plugged into. That outside outlet goes under the deck, around the yard. I have power. Oh my gosh, so that was the source. But I had to go to work. I was too late to do anything, so everything was unplugged, and I had to let it go from the day. Now, lucky for me, during the day, the sun came out, and even though the temps were going down, the sun came out, and the PSGF hit about the mid to upper 30s for a good chunk of the middle of the afternoon, so that was all fine. But my cabin cold frame, well, let's take a look at that right now. So I have the Govee apps, and I look at the Govee data all the time on my phone, and it's been blue for a long, long time. Now, one of the problems of the Govee when you just get the Bluetooth version is you have to be within 100 feet for it to get updated data. So I'm sitting at work and it said December 7th on it, which means I hadn't checked it since Saturday. But I was just out there now, I got all the updated data, and there you go. We have all this beautiful weather hovering around 40 degrees on average. Beautiful temps for the passive solar, or excuse me, the cabin cold frame. And then look at that spike. You know what that means, everybody. That was Tuesday night into Wednesday. That was Tuesday after we got back from work. And guess what? That is exactly when we noticed the power was out. We got home about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. And this spiked, look at that, just before 4 o'clock, probably more like 3 o'clock. And it probably got really warm in there because there could have been a little fire in there, for crying out loud. I'm so lucky. Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that nothing worse happened. But it warmed up for a short amount of time, a short spike there, and then it came crashing down because there was no more heat. And the temps all day today, of course, were falling down to where we are now in there, 20.8. Now the trees in there, arborvitaes and some of my other trees, I think they're totally fine to be in there and be frozen right now because a lot of the trees are fine. The roots can go down to the 20s, and we'll have to worry about that cabin cold frame tomorrow. So that's why I went to go get the extension cord today to go from the garage on a good circuit and go down into the PSGF and plug that in. So we'll go out there in a little bit and I'll see how warm the PSGF is warming up from the heater being back on. Remember, the two gauges said 21 and 32 degrees, so a little discrepancy there. Scary stuff. You can never be too careful. And so my word of warning to any of you making cold frames in the future, and if you have one now and you have wiring that's a little bit suspect, go out and get yourself the next thicker size wire. Make sure you have enough. So I got the 14 gauge wire that can hold 1600 watts. And the heater out there, those little heaters, 1500 watts. So that's like at the top end of that extension cord. So I can't be putting 4 or 5 fans on there and another heater, or I'm just gonna blow out another circuit or something, right? So now the heater's on, the PSGF will be fine tonight as we go down to 7 below zero. It'll probably stay in the low 30s, upper 20s with that heater on, just enough to keep everything right at about freezing. Scary stuff. So make sure you have good wiring, make sure you have good access to everything. On a day like today, I had to go to work and wait for 10 hours or so before I could work on my stuff and fix it up. So we'll go check that and see if it's fixed up in a little bit. So what else am I going to talk about today? Well, I have a couple of exciting things happening. For one, this Saturday, I'm going to my very first show where I'm going to sell some of my bonsai. That's right. So my wife makes her French macarons, and she keeps telling me, Dave, you got to get into one of these shows, these craft shows, and sell your trees. And I'm like, I just don't have enough trees in a place where I want to sell them yet. And this one came up, and it's kind of a real naturalistic event. And the gal that's put it all in is called Chick of the Woods. And she's a mushroom forager. And so there's all kinds of demonstrations, and I didn't get in there in time to do a demonstration. I would love to have done a demonstration with bonsai, but maybe next year. But I'm gonna get my feet wet and get in there and do a show. Now it's right before the holidays. If anybody wants a unique gift, a bonsai tree from someone who always thought about that, I have a couple of trees that I'll see if I can go ahead and sell. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you a couple of trees that I'm just gonna have on my display. I'll take pictures, I'll show you how it all goes. And it's just one of those next things with Bonsai Acres and Dave's Bonsai, where I'm trying to be able to have more trees for people, provide some trees for people, and then help them with consultations and workshops and all the things that I'm doing. And I'm gonna share some of that with you. So here's the first one right here. This is one of my portulacarias that used to be in a small forest. Now, if I can show you that image of this forest of 3 or 4 trees from a few years ago, now look at this tree. So it's got a nice slant. I kept this rock here because it was just like it was kind of meant to be. And it's got a decent pot here, and I'm gonna polish this up and get it ready to see if someone will maybe buy this one at the fair. So here's one of my PAs. That's gonna be on the display table. This one will also be on the display table. Now this one has a pretty nice nabari for someone who might get into bonsai, but what I like about it is it's just got some decent little movement in all these branches that are starting to get thicker. And there's of course things I would do to this for the future, this bonsai, but I thought it was a big enough tree and a ramified enough tree. We'll see if someone likes it. If they don't, we'll come back and we'll keep working on it. I've got this new branch right here growing up that'll be this nice fill up this hole right here, so I can talk about that with people. But hopefully this one will be a tree that someone is interested in. So I have a couple of PAs that I'll be selling. And if someone likes jades in general, I also have my regular jade that I have several cuttings from. And here's one of my jades that I have that I recently put in this pot, and this is just there securing it. But there's one of my jade bonsai trees. So it's got some good ramification, albeit young. It's got some girth to it now. It's a fun tree in a nice little blue pot, cobalt blue, and we'll see. People are interested in picking up something like that as a neat little, very unique Christmas gift. And then hopefully they'll join Minnesota Bonsai Society, or maybe they'll hook up with me and we'll do a workshop together and teach them more about bonsai. So I have a couple more trees. Let me show you what else I got. This next one is one of my bigger tiger bark ficuses that I've picked up in the last year or so, and I cleaned it up a little bit and I repotted it this summer, and it's actually growing some figs on it right now, which is kind of fun. So we got some of the, we'll leave those on there just because it's kind of cool. It'd be fun if they were painted red for this holiday get together, but it's got some decent movement here and some age to it, a really nice thick nabari with this fun slant, and we're gonna go ahead and clean this one up and put this one on the market too on this fair on Saturday. This is my biggest and oldest tree, and we'll see if people are willing to spend a few bucks for this guy. A pretty little turquoise pot too, so I kind of like that. So there's another one for this weekend's show. Now, if that tree's a little too big and out of the price range for someone, this one's gonna be a little bit less expensive, and it's got a really fun low curve to this one. I really like this one. Spin that around for you and see that side, this side, a fun kind of the oblong oval, or the kind of flower shape, if you will. Get that kind of interesting shaped pot. So kind of a pretty unique pot, and it really pushed out nice growth after I repotted this one and brought it into the plant room actually. In the last month, it's really started to just fill up nicely with these nice small leaves, and it's just a fun little tree with some really nice movement. I think this one will go. I just have it's gonna be a good price point, I think, and it's a good size, and I think people are gonna pick this one up. let's keep our fingers crossed. I got a couple more to show you. 3 tiger barks in a row. That's what I have the most of this time of year, and they're tropical plants, so we'll cover them up when they bring them outside from the event so they don't get too cold. It'll be in the 30s on Saturday after this cold spell, so they should be okay. But another really wonderful slant tree here. It's got the windswept potential. Look at this branch down here, a fun windswept. We could get rid of these branches up here and make this a full windswept if I keep this one, but I'm gonna see if someone wants to pick up this nice one, a little bit smaller pot, and it just makes it look like a really nice, fun tree. I love the layers of this tree. We've got this pad down here. We've got a little mini kind of section right here and here, and there's the tip up here. It's balanced pretty well, and it's just a nice tree. I think it'll catch someone's eye. I think that one will be a seller too. The last two, I think, will be potential sellers. So let me show you 1 or 2 more things, and then I've got one more thing to talk about before we wrap this one up today. And the final 2 today are just kind of fun. So I have a couple of starter PAs I can sell in training pots if someone wants to get really at a very entry-level price point. I've got a half a dozen or so of those I'll put on there. I got a couple other PAs and 1 or 2 other of the tiger barks, but they're not in as nice a pot, so I have to figure out what I'm gonna do with those. But they'll be priced accordingly. But then I've got these 2 fun little starters, just the cuteness of it all, right? Get people's attention that you can start with the cutest little PA. Portulacaria after there with some movement on the branches already a little bit there. And it's got this really cute little black pot. That'll sit in that pot for a couple of years before it thickens up into something like this. And then I'll also be able to talk about people like this is year 1 from a cutting, and this is about 6, 7 years. Isn't that fun? 6 or 7 years ago, I started this one. Probably a little bit bigger than this when it started. And then this is a narrow leaf ficus cutting that got some roots. It's really nice root structure on this one. It's just a single little stalk coming up here, but it started to subdivide up here. And again, just to tell people where you can start and how inexpensive it can be to start really small, and then you decide all the growth of these trees from the beginning. But I'm sure I'll probably sell the more done trees, if you will, because they just look cooler already. But I want to have a little bit of all sizes on there just to show people. So there's the last 2. We'll have these on display as well at the show. Now hold on, I'll be right back. Another reason I was delayed in getting my stuff taken care of in the PSGF and the cabin cold frame today is I had to go pick up a tree. I got a random call from a guy who found me on the internet, and he said like, hey, would anybody like to come and have a free tree? And of course I'm like, well, sure, of course I am. So I drove to his house today and met this guy. So his name is Michael, and he's the kind of guy who said that he told me straight up he's lazy. And it's kind of hard to be lazy in the bonsai hobby, but he loves the bonsai look. He's an artist, he's an art, I think he either he's a curator or works at art galleries. I'm forgetting exactly what he said, but you could tell when you walked into his house that this guy's into art and some very high-end stuff and very, very cool. And he said, like, I'd love a bonsai, but this one's dying and it keeps growing leaves and falling off. So it's not been for him. And he said, hey, Dave, you can have it. So we talked for a good half an hour. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm going, I got to get home, but I really wanted to talk to him about his tree. So he picked this up from one of the websites out there. I don't know which one. I didn't ask. And it is a Chinese elm tree. And it's grown leaves and it's died. And it's grown leaves and it's died, or the leaves have fallen off. Now, he wants to have an indoor tree. And so I told him that, you know what, a ficus someday might be a little bit better, although there are some Chinese elms that people keep indoors. So it's in my plant room right now. It's going to be in a recovery mode, so I'm going to see how it's going to do down here, and I might actually eventually put it in either the passive solar green frame or my cold frame in the garage and let it maybe do about 4 to 6 weeks of dormancy after it recovers down here. But I also don't know if I should do that, if I should just let it recover and just keep it indoors, but put it in some brand new soil. He's had it for about 6 months, doesn't know when it was repotted last. It could be years before it was repotted. Who knows what the roots look like? But there's some really nice dark green leaves on there. So it's trying to do stuff, but it's weak. And I see all kinds of little new green buds that have tried. But let me go ahead and talk about this Chinese elm just a little bit, because I just want to remind a few folks, and I've got my cheat sheet here, my phone with the old Google Internet. Now, I always go to Bonsai Empire. I love Bonsai Empire and all their care guide sheets. And one of the things this gentleman said about some of the people online and what they say frustrated him, and I can totally understand. And we say this in Bonsai all the time. Well, if you got yellow leaves, it might mean you're watering a little too much. But it also could mean that you're watering a little bit too little. Also, maybe you got a little bit too much sun on it, or maybe you don't have enough sun on there. So how do you know? With each species, and there's so many out there. Well, most of my experience with Chinese elms have been all outdoors, pretty much full sun to part shade. And I've given mine more shade and they seem to grow more, and they do grow like a weed. But indoors all the time with artificial light, again, I'll read what it says here. If this is again from Bonsai Empire and talking about if you have an indoor Chinese elm bonsai, you can place it outside during the summer, but it's best to bring it into a cool but frost-free room in the winter. So even if you have an indoor Chinese elm, you want it to be in a more cool place. So my 74-degree plant room in here might be a little too warm for this guy. So I'm going to keep him in the kids' game room with just a little bit of light in there, and then just keep it cooler, right? Because that'll get down into the 60s. So you have to be careful. It does say here, the Chinese elm can usually endure some frost, but it differs depending upon the region it was imported from. So depending upon where it was imported from China, you don't want it to get super, super cold, right? So we can't keep these outdoors usually in the winter in Minnesota. I've known that, but I don't know exactly which region and which species for sure, which cultivar I would keep indoors all year long, or even partially. I've never kept mine indoors in the wintertime. Mine are in the passive solar green frame or the garage cold frame. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut off all the branches we don't want on this guy. There is some wire on here, but there's wire on here and the branch isn't even bent. So I don't know what was happening here. And I probably need to repot this. I've talked about this recently a lot. When you get a brand new tree to you, you have no idea what this is in and no idea what the root structure is. And how do I know how to water this tree if I don't know what kind of soil's in there? So though I might not cut a single root from this guy, I think we're gonna have to get it out of this pot and repot it. But before I think about doing that, let's go ahead and just cut it in its form right now, just to see what's alive and see what branches we might not want. And I don't know, what do you think? Is this the, oh, and by the way, if anybody has experience with Chinese elms indoors year-round, please send me a message in the chat down below, right? Or send me an email at bonsaiacres@gmail.com. That's bonsaiacres@gmail.com. Let's talk about the Chinese elm, but say it on the comments as well. Okay, so I'm gonna take my glasses off so I can get a little scope here. What are we gonna do with this guy? This branch is growing in. Now, again, Chinese elms grow like crazy, so we can cut almost all these branches off and it's probably gonna shoot up wonderful growth next time. This branch right here, right there, is going inside. There's two branches here. I think I'm gonna cut this one because this one has some fun. Move it and shorten it up. Growing back in, let's cut that down and let's cut that shorter. So those guys right there, we just shortened up. There's two branches competing for stuff right here. Let's get rid of one of them, huh? We don't need two there. This has got some new growth. Let's leave it there. I don't know what's going to be the front, so I don't know what I'll cut here first, but I think this one, I like the movement on the other one better. So we're just going to cut that there. We're going to cut that shorter. This one's kind of going straight up in a weird way. It's kind of a weird branch structure there. What else can we cut? That has wire on it. This one I'm just going to cut off right there. This is coming back at a weird angle. So this is just cleaning up this tree. We're going to see what is alive. And as I cut in here, I'm kind of look to see if I have any green spots to this tree that are still... you can do the scratch test as well and scratch lower on the branches. And there's some green right there. Now this has some funky wire on it right here. So let's go ahead and take our wire off. Now, if this came from a reputable bonsai supply, this is one of the worst wiring jobs I have seen in a long time. They overlapped the wires. It didn't move the branch at all. It's too thin to even move this branch. Interesting. Now, after I talked with Michael for a length of time, he was excited about bonsai still. It may be because I get a little passionate about this subject. So Mike and I are going to keep in touch, and I'm going to look for a great bonsai tree for him. Hey, there's another thing for the comments, everybody. Could you go ahead and tell me what you think would be the best indoor bonsai? Which ficus tree would you recommend? So we have all the wire off, okay? We've got a little stub back here, little growth trying to happen, but we're gonna cut that right off. And there's green down there, and plenty of green. That's nice. Okay, so we just smoothed that off to get our first branch up here. I like this as our primary branch. This has a double branch again in it, so we're going to go ahead and cut off this left one and keep this one and just cut it back. Is it green there? Yeah, not as green as down there, but it is green right there, and we'll probably get more growth somewhere on this, this cut point next year, because again, this is a tree that's going to grow ferociously because it is a Chinese elm. And there's a perfect example right there. Can we see all the branches on there? That's just so wild and crazy. And because it's so crazy and we have growth back here in green, we're going to go ahead and cut this whole branch right off right there. That'll all grow back, okay? And then this one has some fun movement already, but it's, let's cut this section off right here. And again, we'll balance some of this growth. Let's actually cut this thick piece off right there. And there we go. We have a little pad with some ramification right there. We have a pad that might put on some new growth. We'll see. We'll kind of see. We can kind of see what happens to this tree. We're gonna, when we repot it too, we're gonna see how healthy the roots are and what we have to work with. A couple of branches going back in towards the tree. I just don't want some of those. And again, Chinese elm is gonna put on a whole bunch of growth next season, even when it looks this bare right now. All right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna shorten this branch as well. Now we have that little pad right there. We've got this pad right here that has this really weird branch growing back towards you. Oh, and that whole branch is kind of kittywampus right there. So we're gonna come in under here and cut that. So I'm gonna continue now to cut some of these branches, just the ones I think are in weird shapes, straight up, straight down, those kind of things, and clean this up a little bit. Be back in a flash. So as you can see, I went ahead with the big chop right here. After monkeying around with it, taking this straight up, straight down, multiple branches, I pretty much cut, well, a lot of it off, right? There was some stuff that was dead. There's some stuff that was questionable. And now I think with all the green that we saw, we know that the tree is alive. We're gonna see more growth. And so we'll leave it recover here in the plant room to see if it'll put on new growth. And then we're just gonna keep monitoring it from there. Again, all your tips and suggestions are really welcome on this one because I've never kept a Chinese elm indoors for the wintertime in my plant room. It might be a little warm in here, but we'll see. So let's get a new pot for this guy, okay? I've taken the tree out of the pot, and yeah, this is one of those situations where there's some perlite in there. Nope, that's pumice. There's some pine bark in here. It looks really like a lot of dirt is in here, a lot of organic material. We do have some wood chips, but it looks a lot like a lot of dirt. Look at this, just kind of, I'm gonna peel that away. And I don't see a really nice root structure here. So I have no idea what website he said he got this from. I have no idea when it was repotted last. I have no idea of the age of this tree. But look at this ball of kind of gunk, right? This is a ball of roots that have a lot of muck in here and dirt in here. This is not good bonsai soil. So if I am correct, if I am optimistic and hopeful and put this into some really good soil, I think this will take off and breathe better. It won't be a mushy mess, and he's not going to overwater this tree anymore. Or I should say, I'm not going to overwater this tree anymore. He did give me this tree to play with and to have. It's mine, and we'll get him a new tree down the road. I'll connect with him next summer and find a good tree for him when it's a better time of year to get him into a tropical. But this is kind of messy, gunky, icky. I'm gonna go ahead and get some water and we're gonna wash this guy out. We're gonna rinse this guy out and we're gonna give a whole new life to this tree. And I think I have just the pot for this one with the root ball being as small as it is. It won't be a fancy blue pot, but I think it's gonna be a decent pot because of the curves of this tree. And the size of this root ball, it'll support it. So let's get this out of the way. I'll do some rinsing off and we'll be back in a flash. We still have a little bit of mucky spots in here, but we've generally washed this thing off really, really nice. So we have more roots than I expected. I just didn't see a lot of these roots because it was so plastered to this root ball, this ball of roots at the bottom here. And there's a big chunky roots at the bottom. So again, is it a good time of year to do a massive chop of this taproot, if you will? Probably not the best time of year. Will it be okay in my plant room to recover from this job? It probably will, but I don't know if I'm gonna risk it. I think I'm just gonna put it in the pot, let it really get healthy, and then we'll start working on those roots next year. I still might cut a few off, but I'm not gonna do this great big root chop. That's a big root there. It actually makes for a really good nabari on this tree, and it makes the tree another inch or so longer. So we might cut that root off right there for the future. As a matter of fact, let's do that now. We'll cut that one off. Didn't cut off that much. And then we're gonna have all of that extra girth there. And then there's another one here that curves up in a really funky pattern. Let's cut that off. Yeah, we'll get rid of that guy. And I only got rid of that much. That wasn't that bad at all. So see, that one really wasn't giving this tree a lot of sustenance from that one root. And now we have this really funky root plane that curves in a couple directions. And that's gonna be hopefully a new bottom down the road. All right, so it's in my water. We're trying to get this thing a little bit cleaner, and there we go. So it looks pretty good down here. We've got some viable roots. We're gonna cut some of these shorter, but then I said I had a pot for us to put it in. Well, this is one idea of mine. Now, this is a double pot where it has a place for water and it has a place for the tree. This is one really good possibility for this tree. We could put this like this, and then it kind of grows maybe over the pond a little bit. We could angle it like this. Could be kind of fun. But I didn't think that was the best choice at first because I thought this round pot would be really fun. Now, it's not a glazed pot for a Chinese elm, deciduous type tree, but it's a really nice round pot, and I like the curves of this tree with this pot. So you know what? We are gonna go for it. We're gonna put it in this pot. It'll be a little bit smaller of a pot, so it'll have some really good chance to kind of really put itself into a good place, a sustenance. Not too big of a pot. Sometimes the big pots, the roots go wild and crazy, and we want to make sure that we're going to have nice tight root ball, but definitely flaring out in kind of a 360 pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and put this mesh on, and I'm going to get some wire in here so we can tie this thing down. I'll be back in a flash. All right, I have my wire, my meshes, and I've got the cable in there. We're just going to put this wrap around one tree here. And we're going to try to see if I can find kind of a proposed front here. And it's a round pot, so it's going to have to look good from all directions, right? We want to make sure it looks good from all directions. And I got to get that burnt smell out of this room, so I got to take that tree out of here pretty soon too from the cabin cold frame. I think with the way the roots are flaring, I'm going to go ahead and go this way from this direction, right there. And again, I'm not going to really cut much roots, so let's just cut a few tips off. We're going to get this thing back in there. Reinvigorate some of these roots, hopefully. There. I think we're going to go right there for right now for this repot. We're going to put this wire over here. We got one big root down there. It's going to hold it in real nice and tight. This is a tree that doesn't have enough roots for me to feel comfortable not wiring it in, so I'm going to go ahead and wire this one in. I don't wire a lot of my trees in anymore, especially my tropicals. But this is a deciduous tree with my Chinese elm. There we go. Now it's in there, nice and tight. I can lift it up right here with just one wire, and we've got a tree. It looks a little bit leaning, of course, that towards you on that side. This side's a little bit away from us, but it's got that branch. So we can go more. This is the front. All right, so let's get some more soil in there. Well, how about that, everybody? We got a new tree. So we have a Chinese elm with some really fun curves to this tree. We've got life. We've got green where we cut. And we put it in this nice little round pot here, which I think fits it real nice. It is leaning a little bit back towards me. It should be more straight up a little bit so we can get a nice look all the way around. but I just need this in a pot that's gonna recover. It's in really good soil now, my mix of soil. A lot of people ask me my mix of soil. It's usually 50-50 Akadama and pumice. This has a little bit of leftover recycled lava rock in there. I'm going away from lava rock, so I primarily use Akadama and pumice right now for most of my soil mix, about a 50-50 mixture. If trees need a little bit more water, I'll put a little bit more Akadama in there. If trees need a little bit less water, I'll put a little bit more pumice in there, and that Akadama really helps hold on to the moisture, or the nutrients, as well as some of that moisture. So there is the new tree in a pot that it'll be able to thrive in, I hope, and we'll let it sit here in the plant room and get reacclimated to a new environment, see if it pushes out some new growth. Please add in the comments your thoughts about what I should do with this long term. Should I go right into a cold frame and hope it survives all these 40-degree cold frame in the garage all winter long? Or do we just go ahead and treat it like an indoor plant this year, slow recovery, and then we'll put it into some semi-dormancy next season? Awesome. Well, it was a crazy episode, all over the place, trying to protect my trees in the PSGF with the new extension cord. I hope things are going to be okay. So I'm going to go out there and check the PSGF next, and I'll give you a quick little update on how things are a couple hours after I set it back up. But here is the tree now. I'll leave you this here. Here we go. And I'll be back, you know, kind of like this. Yeah, okay, so after I ran all the way out to the PSGF in this blisterly cold weather, 20-mile-an-hour winds, well, 15, 20 below zero, I remembered that I have my phone and the power of my devices out there that talk to my, I didn't even have to go outside. It says 29.5 degrees, 29.4, as I just said. That, of course, it had to go down a tenth of a degree. But when I did go out there, the power is still good, the light's still on in the heater, and both temperature gauges now, one was 31 and one was 29. So now they're 2 degrees apart, so that makes me feel really good. 29.2 degrees. This will go on all night long and keep this thing above freezing once it catches up. Now, it was down to 20, so it's caught up 10 degrees in the last couple of hours. It's just that little heater, and it's cold out there, so it's going to work really hard to stay around that freezing point. But that'll be fine for the trees that I have in that environment. Oh boy. Whew. Now, I've been nonstop since I woke up this morning, and I barely sat down for any dinner, so I'm going to call it quits right now, and we'll have to pick this up later. Of course, I'm really itching to edit it, right? Hey, take care of you. Take care of your bonsai, and you know we're going to catch you on the next one.